Well, good morning. It is lovely to be here with you all this morning. Normally I can be found doing youth, but today Paul has asked me to open the Bible with you. So without further ado, we will look at the passage that we're going to do today. So this is John 1, verse 14 to 16. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. John testified concerning him. He cried out, saying, "This is the one I spoke about when I said, 'He who comes after me has surpassed me, because he was before me.' Out of his fullness we have all received grace in place of grace already given." So, verse 14 says, "The Word became flesh and lived among us." Now, in the Message, which is a different translation or paraphrase of the Bible, it actually says, "The Word became flesh and blood and moved into the neighborhood." So, Jesus became flesh and blood and moved into our neighborhood. So, I think another slide is going to come up now, and it's a picture of someone. And it's not a trick question, but does anyone know who the main person in this picture is? Yeah, it's the Queen. Shocking. I think I actually stole this analogy from Joel Sales from Pattern Church. I didn't realize that till after I'd written it down. But basically, the Queen, to us, she's the Queen, she's fully the Queen. But to her grandchildren, she is also Granny. So she is fully the Queen and fully a Granny. And in a similar way, Jesus is fully God and fully human. So, just as the Queen, she's fully the Queen, she is also fully their grandma. Jesus is fully God and fully human. So, what does this mean? Well, because Jesus became flesh and blood and moved into the neighborhood, because he is fully human and fully God, the Bible says he is able to empathize with us in our weakness. So Jesus was tempted in every way, as we are, but unlike us, he did not sin. Now, I don't know if anyone here has a dog or likes dogs, but back in the 90s, we used to look after a lot of dogs. My mum would let them stay at our home instead of going to a kennel. Anyway, there was one dog we looked after. He was a collie cross, beautiful golden fur, called Danny, quite sweet, quite annoying. And one day, my brother and I came home to find that my mum had bought us some donuts. So we excitedly ran to the kitchen door, ready to stuff our faces. But then, the devastation. We opened the kitchen door, and on the floor was a chewed, empty packet, completely empty, of donuts. A trail of sugar all over the kitchen floor, leading neatly to under the table where Danny sat, with jam on his paws, on his nose. Now, not one donut survived, I'm sad to say. The culprit was obvious, and yet Danny tried to hide from us under the table. And sometimes in life, when we mess up or do something we know we shouldn't, we, like Danny, can try to hide from God. Now, Jesus moved into the neighborhood so that he might become what the Bible describes as a merciful and faithful high priest. That's not a term you hear very often, but in the Old Testament, high priests were basically appointed to represent people to God. So they would offer sacrifices and gifts to God for people's sin. And part of the job description, if you like, of being a priest, the Bible says, was to deal gently with people. So this is because the priest himself is like us. He's subject to weakness. He's subject to temptation. So he should be able to empathize and understand that people will struggle too. You see my colorful notes? The difference with Jesus as our high priest is that, yes, he empathizes with us in our weakness. He was tempted in every way, but unlike the priests of the Old Testament, unlike us, he did not sin. And so that's why Jesus was able to die for us, because fully human and fully God, he was perfect. And so he became our great high priest. But back to Danny under the table, feeling all ashamed and sort of sad with himself. Did we discipline him and tell him not to do it again? Yes. Did we still love him anyway? Yes. He had nothing to be afraid of because we still loved him. And it's the same with Jesus. Does he command us to turn away from sin and turn to God? Yes. But does he understand what it's like to be tempted? Yes. And is he compassionate, merciful, and faithful? Yes. So rather than hiding from him in our shame, imagine if we understood the love and mercy he has for us and turned to him sooner, turned to him quicker, and experienced this for ourselves. Now, here is where the dog analogy falls apart. Obviously, Danny was disciplined, he was loved, but he was left in his own strength never to eat donuts again. And I don't know about you, but I couldn't do that. So, Jesus doesn't leave us in our weakness. The Bible actually says that he helps us. So the only one who has never given into any temptation not only loves us, but he helps us too. We've just got to turn to God. So next time you and I, or not you and I, maybe with you, but you are right, that's my friend Lisa. Anyway, next time you are driving and getting frustrated at a tractor in front of you, we have a choice. Do we turn to God, ask him to help us not to get annoyed, or do we sin in our anger? I know what I usually do, and it's not the first. Jesus knows what it's like, and I'm sure he got stuck behind a slow camel or two. But unlike us, he did not sin. He doesn't leave us on our own. He helps us in our weakness. We just need to turn to God. Now, while Jesus was on earth, fully human and fully God, he experienced many things that we go through. So his friend Lazarus, unfortunately, passed away. And in the Bible, it says Jesus wept. He basically experienced grief and bereavement. When Judas betrayed Jesus, he experienced deep betrayal that led to his death. And when Jesus took our punishment on himself on the cross, he experienced severe physical pain. So whatever we are going through in life, Jesus empathizes with us. He knows what it's like because he moved into the neighborhood. And what's more is he chose to go through all of that because he loves you. So I'll tell you a little story. Basically, 4 years ago or so, I was having a ton of hospital tests done, all the scans, all the ologies, in and out of A&E, all that jazz. And no one knew what was wrong. I was pretty terrified. I could have lost my job, couldn't walk to the shop, all that sort of stuff. Anyway, eventually, I was booked in for surgery 4 days before Christmas. Now, it sounded silly, but my biggest fear actually wasn't, what are they going to find? My biggest fear was I was afraid of not waking up from the anesthetic. So I prayed, I asked a ton of people at church to pray, and in the days leading up to the surgery, I basically had the audio Bible on the app on repeat and worship music on constantly. And I thought, no, let's try and chill and just watch Netflix. But the second I turned it off, I was like, the fear crept back in. So I basically just had to surround myself with Jesus because I could not deal with it. And so the rest of the passage that we're looking at today talks about God giving us grace upon grace, or blessing upon blessing. So I hope that by sharing with you today, you'll see what God did during a difficult time, and it might give you hope too, and then you could give hope to other people as well. So on the day of my surgery, I woke up to just this amazing sense of God's love and peace. Now, 3 months earlier, I'd adopted a beautiful rescue cat called Fifi. She was very nervous when I first got her, trying to suss me out. But she'd sleep at my feet. She didn't know me well enough to sleep by my head, apparently. But that morning, I woke up to find her snuggled up, curled up right by my arms. And it's really silly, but it did feel like God was with her, comforting me as I woke up. That was the first time she'd slept like at the top. So blessing number 1. Then later that morning, I entered the hospital, walked to my room, and again, something silly, but God cares about the little things. If it's possible to have a favorite number, my favorite number is 8, and I'll tell you why. It's because my birthday is 8th of the 8th, so there you go. Anyway, God obviously knew this was my favorite number, and as I walked into the room I was going to be in, the sign on the door said, Abby, room 8, and I was like, I see what you've done there, God. And it was like he'd cared about the details. He'd even thought about what room I was going to be in. And so it just gave me that reassurance that he's got it, he's got me. So blessing number 2. And as it turned out, room 8 was the only place in the hospital that I had phone reception. So blessing 3. Anyway, the final and biggest blessing was that I basically walked from my room down the stairs into the operating theatre. And the most incredible thing I'd ever experienced with God basically happened. I felt God's tangible presence, like literally as if I could touch it. It was like this, kind of can't describe it, this like thick, weighty cloud around me, all around me, that I just felt such peace, such love. And I remember looking down at those silly things they give you to put on your feet. And I was walking through the doors, past the curtains, round the beds, and I saw the operating theatre doors. And they had these 2 portholes in, through which I could see my surgeon putting his mask on, his gloves on. And I could have been terrified. It really did look like something from Grey's Anatomy. I got a bit freaked out. Could have been. But actually, I felt God's presence so strongly, as if he was walking alongside me, surrounding me, encompassing me with his presence. So blessing number 4. God not only empathized with me where I was, but he helped me through it. All I had to do was turn to God and ask him to help. All we have to do is turn to God and ask him to help. And as we turn to him, he comforts us so we can comfort others with the comfort he has given us, which again is one of the reasons why I'm sharing this with you today. I hope that you'll know his comfort and presence for yourself wherever you're at, and then eventually be able to share that comfort with other people. Verse 16 says, out of his fullness we have all received grace in place of grace already given. Or, as another version of the Bible puts it, spiritual blessing upon spiritual blessing, gift upon gift. We're nearly there. Just need to get the paper sorted. Now, my grandma would make these amazing gift boxes for our birthday, just a normal blue gift box. She'd stuff it full of tissue paper. It looked like it was empty and just full of tissue paper. But basically, you'd rummage around, you'd find a beautifully wrapped gift, you'd unwrap it, and it would probably be something you always wanted. And you're thrilled, you think that's it, this was a great present, and then she whispers, there's more. So then you rummage around again, find another gift, unwrap it, again, something amazing, probably something edible, and you think that's it. You're like, thank you, Grandma, this was amazing. And again, she whispers, there's more, there's more. All the more, the gift giver, my grandma in this case, was thrilled and just delighting in the fact of watching you unwrap all of these gifts. And God is like this with us. He gives us blessing upon blessing, gift upon gift, grace upon grace as we turn to him. And as we turn to him, we experience the gift of him being faithful, merciful, and compassionate. So, after experiencing him do these amazing things, despite my fear before surgery, I got to experience his help as I turned to him and those blessings I mentioned earlier. Now, in the present day, I've got, the diagnosis was 3 lifelong illnesses, and I've got very real upcoming hospital procedures. But what would have terrified me 4 years ago, God has poured out blessings of peace, blessings of security, and blessings of intimacy with him, and I wouldn't change that for anything. Jesus comforts us so we can comfort others with the comfort he has given us. So imagine if we turned to God and experienced his comfort ourselves, and then we shared it with our friends, with our family, with the tens of thousands of people in North Swindon, so they'd know his comfort for themselves. Imagine how that could transform our community if those tens of thousands then went on to share his comfort with their friends and their family. How amazing would that be? So imagine, rather than hiding under the table or the duvet, if you're me, turning to our compassionate, merciful, and faithful God and experiencing that grace upon grace. So whether it is temptation, bereavement, betrayal, shame, pain, or fear, or all of the above, let's turn to the one who empathizes, there you go, I did it, I said I'd get the word wrong. Let's turn to the one who empathizes with us and helps us in our weakness. Let's turn to God.